Hello, everyone. Welcome to the pub.
Hello.
Hey, Carl.
How are you?
Good. How you doing, man?
Welcome to the pub.
I'm grand.
Hello.
Hello.
Hello, me good to be back.
How are you?
Somebody's got their.
Good. How you doing, man? Welcome to the pub.
Hold on.
The way everybody appears is like an old science fiction movie, you know. All the baddies all coming in on the
Do you
screen.
remember, Thomas, do you ever remember Celebrity Squares with Bob Monkhouse?
No, I do, yeah. They had that, yeah. I remember the American version was even worse.
Really? I liked Bob Monkhouse. The show stank, but I liked Bob Monkhouse. Hello, Timony. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, Christian.
Hello, everybody. Happy New
Hey,
Year.
Christian.
Hey,
Happy New Year, Christian.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, all of you.
Hey, butter.
Bob Monkhouse, Christian mate. One of my relatives down in Dublin was a mason for most of his life, and he said amongst the celebs he used to see when he went to mainland UK for meetings was Bob Monkhouse, and he thought he was a bit of a twat.
Really?
Excuse me, Mr. Moffat. It's your mainland, not mine.
Oh yeah, no, your mainland is like, have you seen the episode of
Mainland is Europe. You're part of the same archipelago.
That's right. Absolutely. You got it there. That's it. You got it there. Good evening, Jade. Happy New Year.
Good evening. Happy New Year to you too. How is everybody?
We're all still here. We've a new member tonight, James Richardson, who is living presently in a place that's just north of the United States of America with people whose heads do this when they speak. So
You're talking about.
I'm not sure your buddy friend.
I'm not your buddy, guy.
He sings from Canada.
yes, I meant to say Canada. That's what I actually. The
Only
word,
say A after everything and out.
the word slipped my mind. Sorry,
Yeah.
Canada.
Canada.
It used to be called CND, right? And then when they said the abbreviation, it's spelled CANADA. Sorry, guys.
I follow a Canadian. It never really comes up in his speech patterns, unfortunately, Otherwise, I just have more reasons to find him funny.
well, that's what it's all about, isn't it?
I was going to say that.
Don't you know, eh?
Speech.
Hey, Tina.
Hi, Jade.
By the way, Thomas, this relative I was talking about, the mason, he was English. Okay, so that explains his thing.
I was only joking. Don't take it. We don't have to start.
Start more already.
Peace now. We don't have to start that. I was only joking.
I know, but I
Great
don't
way to start off, Thomas. Open mouth.
I know. We just really the Irish trouble. I know. It's my fault. If anyone was going to do it, would have been me. I know.
I know how good you are at the verbal jousting, Thomas, and I'm desperately competitive. That's all I can help.
Okay.
I am not my last name.
gauntlet.
Good Friday Agreement goes up in flames.
I think the gauntlet has been thrown.
Bring back the tool.
Yeah, so welcome, James. I'm very fond of Canada. I find Canadians in general a fine body of people, and nice to have you along.
Yeah, thank you for having me in. Can you guys all hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, good.
Yes.
There was me trying to talk earlier on and realized that it just said unmute in the upper right corner, and I feel like an idiot. Actually, it was only last night.
What the fuck are you doing with an English accent?
Yeah, I know. I've been here 10 years. I got my citizenship just 2 weeks ago, and I didn't get the accent to come with it, unfortunately. So, been here 10 years though.
Where in Canada you live in a really cold part?
Oh yeah, Alberta.
Oh Jesus, yeah. Oh
Yeah. Well, I say it's
Eskimo land.
yes, it's not particularly cold today. Actually, it's only about -3, but it was -38 like 2 days ago. So it just goes up and down.
-38.
Do you guys have the curfew there in Alberta? The way that is it Ontario right now that has a Quebec that has a was it the 10 p.m. to 5 a.m. curfew?
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to say much about them, but that's a strange part of Canada. I don't know what people think they're doing still living there, really. Quebec is and all of those sort of regions around it are a little bit strange. Ottawa as well, very very odd areas like that, and they just seem to get hit the hardest. But you know, normally if you would see people protesting a lot, it would be like the French people, but you know, they've protested the least there probably this time than what I've ever seen.
Yeah, I know. I've got quite a few friends there, and they were all like shocked at how lame Montreal and Quebec was.
Yeah, it's strange because normally they'll have a riot if their steak is done wrong or something, but you couldn't get them to do anything this time.
Yeah, it's like the Irish completely pacified us.
Yeah, it's yeah. I mean, I would say I can't believe my eyes, but I can. So, you know, I'm a bit miffed about this camera that I've got here because it should be at the top here, and it makes people stare at my nostrils. So,
I didn't even notice.
Yeah,
it's awkward like that. Yeah.
I bought a crap computer.
I'd like to, first of all, we're just welcoming Joshua as well. I think this is Joshua's first time to come to the pub. Am I right?
No, he was here before, I think.
I can't hear you, Joshua.
You're muted.
You're muted.
Or
no, it's the sound settings.
Yeah, he had this problem before. I remember. I think.
Yeah, I wouldn't. He was here the first ones, one of the first ones.
Ah,
but probably right before he came up.
Comedian too.
Yeah.
What's that beer you're drinking, Tina?
Belgian poison.
Ooh.
Oh, I had that. That's pretty good. Yeah.
You think? It's pretty mild for a Belgian beer, I find. It's something you can get from the tap here, and it's not particularly good, but it's the only thing I can get because Italian beer is just shit. It's really shit.
Good to know. Good to know.
Joshua doesn't appear to be able to come in here, sound-wise.
Huh.
He seems to be having trouble.
They're only starting to learn to drink beer now, so it'll be a while before they get good at making it.
They put too much sugar in it.
And too fizzy.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, while we're waiting for Joshua to come in, I'd like to, first of all, and I'm sure I'm not the only person to say this, to very warmly and sincerely congratulate Greg, Timony, and Jason on the most recent Week in Strange last Monday, because it was really, really good. I mean, that show, The Week in Strange, is improving. Of course, you're getting more experienced at the vibe of it, but last Monday was really good, and I thought Greg was absolutely.
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, now
yes.
Now that
Yes, you.
Christian just handed me my P60, but yeah, it was great. I watched it last week. I finally watched it the other day. It was brilliant. So, well, thank you, Greg, for filling in.
When you use Zoom, you realize how much you hate the nerds who are behind computers. I believe
I hate it. Yeah.
Behind IT are very, very sick and pitiful individuals, the people who design these systems. They're the people in school who you'd be in the corner of the yard at break time, walking in a circle, mumbling to themselves. And now they're designing all of our IT systems. And they're pitiful, pitiful people. They're poor creatures who invented these systems here. I pray for their souls. No, I don't. I pray for their souls to be damned to hell for eternity.
Oh, God.
Crack whores could invent better computers.
They couldn't. It's just fucking unreal. I had a High Court hearing last week, and on the 16th of December, I had a High Court hearing, and did that microphone fucking switch on for me? And the only time it would switch on is when I'm calling it a cunt in the High Court, and it's everybody'd hear it. that didn't happen. But the judges aren't very patient with people because the judges themselves know what it's like when the system fucks up. But anyway, I want to get back to the Week in Strange because we have the three people from the Week in Strange. We've Greg, Timony, and Jason. And if you'll pardon me for taking the liberty of kind of carrying over from that. First of all, again, I reiterate that it was absolutely outstanding. I thought it was superb from start to finish. You talked, Jason, about the People's Liberation Army of China and how you had seen video footage of the very high discipline of the People's Liberation Army, and how they had been so disciplined and so strict, and how they were drilling so impressively. But I would remind you of one thing, that was propaganda. And what comes out of the People's Republic of China is chosen very carefully by them to be seen. And another thing I'd add is that the Republic of China is Taiwan. So the People's Republic of China is the mainland. The Republic of China is Taiwan. And it took on that name after the revolution. And the pre-revolutionary, pre-communist government moved to Formosa, the island of Formosa, and became Taiwan. So if you ever hear the Republic of China, it's actually Taiwan. It's not the People's Republic of China. But getting back to that, I would think that the Chinese were releasing propaganda there because if we have another global military conflict, and I wouldn't assume that we will, I think the next conflicts could be based around both psychic attacks, which we're seeing at the moment, and around IT. But they won't be fought by troops on the ground. They'd be fought on technological bases that can destroy a country's infrastructure at the press of a button, or that can aerial raid a country, or that can pollute a country in that way. The need for 1 million troops to go in, the reason why the Chinese would have so many troops isn't to use against different countries, it's to deploy against their own people.
Good point. Also, marching perfect sync with bayonets, spinning them and everything. It's not the same thing as being in a battle.
No, not at all. Not at all. It's almost like some kind of battle ballet, isn't it, what they're doing? And you can see that the US has, since Gulf War I and Gulf War II, has completely lost its tolerance for seeing lots and lots of coffins covered in the Stars and Stripes being unloaded out of cargo carriers.
Absolutely.
They just don't tolerate that anymore. And I deal with a lot of they're predominantly young Chinese students here in the UK. They're here studying medium to long term, and they're generally very nice people.
Yes.
But one thing that they are is extremely compliant to the point of being apologetic almost for existing. And
right.
they come up to you with their papers ready, whatever that happens to be, and if you say, "Oh, can you do this? Can you do that?" It's like, "Oh my God, yes!" And they're so ready to back off and back down, And these are like young Chinese people, 20 to 25.
Yeah, Greg, that you're getting to my point there. I know I wanted to comment on what Christian was saying there. That my point with the drill and ceremonies thing, yes, bayonets and spinning rifles and drill and ceremonies is not the same thing as combat. But as I'm sure there may be another veteran or two here in the chat, but what military folks will know about drill and ceremonies, it has more to do with that exact thing that you're talking about, Greg, is the instant obedience to orders and that military discipline that exists within troops. And that's the kind of scary shit when you do have, if you want to call them the CCP version of brown shirts on the streets, controlling COVID controlling.
That's really scary.
Yeah. So let me edit that word out a little bit later. Okay. And, but that idea that discipline, the instant obedience to orders, and that's something that's been lacking within any formidable, from there being a formidable enemy of the U.S. military or of the Allied forces for the last several decades, is a disciplined military. If you ever look at any of the videos, not to talk shit about them, but like the American troops training the troops in the Middle East who are there for the Middle Eastern folks, and they can hardly do jumping jacks together. They can't even stand in a line and do jumping jacks. But there's that thing when you get a group of people, and it's like the Prussian indoctrination stuff, right? Where you get a big enough group of people all moving and courting in the same type of position, doing the exact same posture. And you can just see that in that military parade. And that was from 10 years ago. And recently we saw something with the anniversary of something on TV, and they still have that same sort of physical discipline. And that physical discipline is a direct correspondence to the mental and spiritual discipline of the military that you're looking at. Where to someone who's a non-military person, you might not see that as something that's to be concerned about, is, a well-drilled military. It's like, no, the well-drilled military means they're really good at following orders and really good at the psychological part of not being an individual and only being part of that collective that they're in. They're like a group of elemental demons all working together. So it's their top brass that are above those troops and the civilians that are in charge at the top of the CCP level that will be, giving those worker bees and, those elemental demons that they are, the marching orders. And they're not the type of people that will defect against their against their nation. They're not the type of people that won't follow orders. They will, sacrifice themselves, kind of as you were saying, Greg. Like they're so that culture is so apologetic about even existing. It's the type of thing that will get them to the point where they'll give their life, with no question about it, like instant.
We talked about in the Week in Strange. We talked about mercenaries, and I would rather fight for money than lose my mind and just march into the meat grinder, for no reason. A better reason to fight is for belief and commitment. And that's why armies like the Taliban, you don't want to call them an army, call them what you like, armed groups like the Taliban can win because they're not afraid to die and they believe in something. I'm not trying to lionize the Taliban here. I'm just using them as an example of a group that have succeeded in really inhospitable terrain because they're not afraid to die and they're committed to something. And people, look at what the Russians did during the 1980s in there. They came in with 10 times the troops the Americans had, and they had their asses handed to them ultimately. All the high-tech gear in the world couldn't deliver a victory for them. So you've got these different degrees of why people fight. Belief and commitment in something just for your people, your family, your livelihood, your very life, your country, whatever. Money. Just you're giving me how much? What, $1 million, a week to do this? Yeah, I'll do that. But then there's this hinterland that we're talking about of these robots, these soon to be cyborgs, and I'm interested, extending on from what we were talking about in the Week in Strange, what their vulnerabilities are. Yeah, exactly. You're reading
lack of adaptability.
Mm. Yeah.
I mean. I think that's, you look at the Japanese in World War II, they were very much like robots. I mean, and the Americans and the British and the Australians and the Indians eventually even defeated them just because they were coming at them from tactics they weren't inspecting. American troops and Australian and British troops were better, more adaptable on the ground and things like that, where, the whole samurai culture within the Japanese military was practically robotic suicidal attacks. They eventually were just wiped out. Well, I read something sorry, Carl. At the end of when the atomic bomb was dropped, I read some amazing facts. There was no way in hell that the Allies were ever going to conquer Japan by invading. They still had something like 120,000 aircraft and the pilots to man it, and something like 30 million troops ready and armed and ready to go. So it was the atomic bomb was literally the only, not I would say the only option, but there was no way in hell they could have invaded mainland Japan and beaten them.
Yeah.
Did anybody see that a documentary on the BBC, these thought correction camps in China? It came out 2020, and they were like everyone was playing musical instruments and singing. I mean, it was really kind of militarized, but I just wonder, do they want these kind of things globally, because it was in 2020. It makes me wonder if there's going to be Rona concentration camps and things like that. So,
are these the camps that are designed for the Muslim minorities in China?
Yeah, it was that, and people who were anti-government. But yeah, they were there was a lot of Muslims in there as well. Yeah.
Yeah, I think they want to go and tailor something and tweak it specifically for each different nation so that they can go and use the natural peer pressures that exist within the culture to go and keep out any dissidents. They'll tailor it a little bit, tweak it a little bit here and there, but if people actually cop onto the game, they might have absolutely nothing to work on because there's just going to be a massive
that's why it's not going to happen. It won't happen. It just won't. I don't feel it. I guess they may want it. They might get it in a few countries, but I can't see them. I can't see them winning now at this point. Even the way the whole narrative around the Rona is starting to collapse now rapidly at the moment. What's that?
Israel's pretty fucked up right now.
Yeah,
like they're basically using it as like a giant petri dish. Like there's been a bunch of new variants in quotes coming out of Israel, and they've also invented a new term called flu Rona, which is literally just like a fucking combination of flu and Rona. It's like It's like the most retarded thing I've ever heard. It's like so uncreative.
Maybe Israel's decades of siege mentality has come back to bite them on the ass. There's almost like an institutionalized paranoia that has made them run full force, kamikaze like in needlecraft companies.
Yeah, and in certain aspects of the media world, I've noticed a little bit of censorship going on as well. And but I mean, this is something that doesn't really worry me really, because people have the stuff to go and watch it anyway. But one of these big experts who was involved behind processing and developing this mRNA stuff, well, I can't remember his exact name, but yeah, he was on Joe Rogan recently, and YouTube pulled it down, but it's still up on Spotify. So yeah, they really don't like him for some reason. But yeah, you actually look at the interview itself, and it's the guts of 3 hours. But I was only a bit into it. He manages to just go and drop so many truth bombs in such a short space of time, and he's talking about this culture. I'm trying to think of his.
Peter McCullough?
I'm trying to think of his name.
Dr.
Not Peter McCullough, no. Robert something or Thomas something. I don't know. But yeah, essentially he was on the Joe Rogan podcast. They don't like Joe Rogan, because I mean he's only one guy essentially. He's not the most professional as media standards would go, but I mean he's still doing his own thing.
Come to like him a lot more in recent times. He's really annoyed the shit out of me.
Yeah, same.
Oh yeah. I mean, he's aware of the line of censorship and how they draw it as well. But yeah, all of their culture is really sort of falling apart, really, and how they have to go and maintain it. The only way they can maintain it is to go and keep people corralled, and that's why there's the whole YouTube and Spotify thing, because they're both owned by Google. So they just don't want people to interact and to actually look at all the nuance of what was being discussed, and it's kind of unraveling for them. You can't control 7 billion people in the world. There's always going to be someone who's going to ruin their little games. So, yeah.
That Rogan interview was pulled by YouTube. I've read so many comments around the web from which basically are all saying the same thing, which is like, I was on the fence, or I was unsure, I was curious, I was doubtful up to this point about the mainstream narrative. Now I'm convinced there's something badly wrong here, because Joe Rogan is not like, an international star, but he has gone from being just this podcaster with this big deal with Spotify, his millions. His profile is way up from what it was. So for them to just take somebody like him, who you think they'd have to think twice about doing this, and just yank it, and loads of people are going, hang on, So I was trying to think earlier on today, is there any possible way of looking at that event that could be seen as somehow playing into the hands of the mainstream storytellers? I couldn't think of one. I could only think that all this was doing was really just convincing more people to be more solidified in their doubts about what they're being told.
Well, they want to falsely conflate two separate sciences going on here. They want to go and, look at virology and all this kind of carry on. And they want to conflate that with the wrapping and the perception of how people go and come across virology and that data and everything like that, the social engineering aspects and the corralling of information as well. They don't want people to actually realize, hang on a minute, there's two separate disciplines going on here. I mean, there's what's actually going on, not being followed through with its due diligence. And then on the other end of it, there's the actual people who are trying to relay this information. And they just seem to have these carefully placed people who are there to pollute the information flow. It's the one way. It's the only way I can put it.
It was a real watershed here in Ireland today. The Speaker of the House of Irish Parliament, Buchan Cráile, she basically had an article attacking the government over the whole lockdown. And this is probably the third most powerful politician in the country after the Prime Minister and then the Attorney General. And she went to war saying the whole thing was terrible, especially regarding the needlecraft. People should have been given choices, and the legality is all over the place. Now, the obvious things, but to see a politician of that level saying it, and what made that more interesting was in the comments section of the journal.ie, which is like normally central, they were all agreeing with her. And I was reading comments like, I'm getting tired of hearing about people like this being called tinfoil hat wearing loonies. the other side is consistently shown itself to tell the truth, while the governments have constantly lied about everything. And that was the most popular comments on this article. Now, I know that those people are now agreeing with us on our side. That a year ago, they would have been on the other side. But normies are animals. They're like that. They can be very easily swayed. And that's why I always knew that I always had a great faith in the end that we would win this because of that normie animal who's just a piece of livestock where you prod him one direction, he'll go one direction. And when he's fed up with that direction, you prod him another direction, he'll go back to that direction. And that's exactly what's happening now. I'm seeing that. Idiots who are slagging us off a year ago are now going, oh, they're right. Like it's enough is enough. And that's a huge watershed as far as I'm concerned. Also, The Guardian, which is the ultimate left-wing, control paper of the shattering classes in the UK, an appalling rag, had a major article called about a book. Guys, a virologist wrote a book called When the World Turned to Madness about the last year, savaging the lockdowns and the whole government approach and how everything was wrong that they did. So we're definitely at a watershed here. I'm feeling quite positive today for the first time in a long time. And remember, Biden's thing, the 100+ employees thing, he was either told to get fucked by big corporations or was struck down the state level. That seemed very dark 3 or 4 months ago in the US. Now that's not as bad as it was. Definitely the momentum is in our favor. I don't know if Timony and Jason could agree with that, but I can remember we had these discussions a few months ago, 3 or 4 months ago. We talked about very dark things about people's employment prospects being taken from them, and now that's and even punitive taxes and stuff. But that seems to be now turning. That seems to be turning.
I mean, it honestly seems to be getting. It seems like what goes on over here and what goes on over there almost isn't the same sometimes, because over here it's like things are getting a little bit worse again. That things were going along okay there for a little while, but over here it's like the people are masking up again, and all the
stores are empty.
Yeah, the stores are empty, and that weird thing where there for a while hardly anyone over here in the Tri-Cities had a mask on, and everybody was just going around about their normal business. And now here hardly anybody doesn't have a mask on anymore, and people are kicking us out of stores and restaurants and stuff again. And so it's weird the way that they do a fluctuation with, and as Carl was saying, it's like there's a social engineering that's tailored to every community. Like there's one tailored to the Irish, there's one tailored to the UK, to Israel, to Australia, to everyone, to Canada. Right. It's like what's going on just north of us in Canada is different than what's going on down here. So it's kind of like they play it in waves, and over here things are getting weird again. And but yeah, it's just, you can always just tell by when you go to the grocery store and how many people are walking around outside by themselves in open, fresh air with a mask on and driving in a car by themselves. So yeah.
Well, here definitely now those new mask mandates, and now the surgical masks that were mandatory before, now you cannot wear those anymore. Now you have to have those builder dust masks that don't fit your face. And the only people I see actually wearing them in public are wearing a surgical mask and then the dust mask overneath. It's really ridiculous. Or they're not wearing any at all. Yeah, it's stupid. But what Thomas said also about the politician, about the turning of the tide, I question these politicians so much, because where were you a year ago? Because you must have known the same thing that you know now, but you didn't say anything. And why not? It's probably because it's affecting you personally right now. And while I totally agree that it's in our favor, I don't respect this politician.
Yeah, I agree, Tina, but this, Christian might validate this or to strike it down. A year ago, she was pretty much in the same position she was now. Just wasn't getting interviewed by the papers.
Okay.
On the whole thing.
Yeah, I mean, there's something else arises here. And it's the fact, and I've mentioned it in my video today, Varadkar is going to be returning to the post of Taoiseach soon. Now, when Varadkar was last in the post of Taoiseach, the previous Count Corla, I don't know what his name was, Varadkar rebutted him in the Dáil and said, I suggest you seek legal advice. Now, an idiot like Varadkar, I'll say it here, he's an idiot. An idiot like Varadkar would not understand that in the chamber of the Dáil, the Count Corla is the most senior member. So the head of the Dáil is not the Taoiseach, despite all of RTE's ass kissing of Varadkar and his big fucking ego. The head of the Dáil is the Ceann Comhairle. So for Varadkar to rebuke the Ceann Comhairle in the Dáil was an act of serious indiscipline. And it is quite possible that the present Ceann Comhairle knows that she's going to have to deal with this moron coming back in here telling her job. So there could be a little hidden agenda there. Don't forget, we've a second house. It's a bicameral system here. And there's a very lonely voice in the Seanad, the Senate, Sharon Keoghan, who's speaking out. Sharon Keoghan spoke out about compulsory needlecraft. I'm minding my words tonight. She spoke out about compulsory needlecraft about 3 to 4 weeks ago. She's also spoken out about our pretendy friendies as well. And it's what Thomas said. They're not getting into the mainstream media. You know, Keoghan is not, there's a complete media blackout on Sharon Keoghan in the Seanad. So do remember, we have two houses or two chambers in the Oireachtas, the Dáil and the Seanad. But now this, Thomas is right about what was said by the Ceann Comhairle. Jason, I want to wrap up my point about the army. You're obviously an army man. I'm not. There's nothing worse than an armchair pretend soldier, expostulating with advice about what the army need to do. And they're a pain in the ass when somebody does that. I'm not doing that. My observations regarding the People's Liberation Army of China were just observations that I made. I'm not in any way contradicting what you said about discipline or indiscipline in the US Army or in that. I know military people do not like it when lay people tell them their job. So I wasn't doing that.
It's all good, Christian. I think taking one out of your book, you know, what's her name? Miss Carmody from that film.
Carmody, yeah.
Yeah. And she's the one saying that there's an actual problem, right?
Mm-hmm.
I guess I'm the American version of that, where a lot of Americans are like, they're, you know, they ain't shit over there. It's nothing to worry about. I'm like, just be careful, you know, be careful before you, me as an American to other Americans, be careful before you just dismiss them and not having
something else that the US Army, and I meant to say this following on from the weak constraint, there's something the US Army has over the Chinese, the People's Liberation Army of China, or indeed, as Thomas mentioned, in the Second World War with the Japanese. America is fundamentally, for all of our criticisms of it, America is a free society, and the right to criticize in a respectful way. If you're in the army, I assume in the US Army that you have respectfully the right to say, excuse me, this unit wishes to make an observation. And you don't.
Oh, you're an animal when you join that. You have no rights. You sign away your rights when you join the military there.
Right. Have you the right to make observations?
No, I mean, if the only thing you do is within the Department of the Navy and the Marine Corps, if there is a commander, an officer that is, who is doing something illegal, you have the right to go and what's called request mast, which is to go to their senior and bring about basically a committee of evidence showing that, okay, you know, Commander so-and-so did something illegal, and you're you know, that's the only thing you have. That's if an officer has done something shady, and you can request mast and go above them and have it heard by, you know, basically a judicial unit. But no, as an enlisted soldier or an enlisted Marine, enlisted sailor, Air Force, you know, airman, whatever. No, there is no there's none of that. Instant obedience to orders again is that thing, and
there's no focus group.
There's no focus group, right?
But I imagine it can easily backfire on the soldier requesting mast, yes?
Yes.
So nobody's going to do that.
Right. And it's usually only when there's like some kind of like sexual harassment thing that occurs where it's like, hey, you know, the so-and-so was raped so-and-so, and that information needs to come out. And that's usually how that's handled. It's usually on political, social political things like that happen when there's, you know, something actually, you know, illegal going on, or, you know, something like that. But
not bitching about orders.
Right, not bitching about orders.
I watched that movie, American Gangster, with Denzel Washington. Fantastic movie. And it was about them running drugs out of Vietnam back to the US during the Vietnam War. And it was like there was so much corruption in the US military in Vietnam that like anyone could have reported anybody. So instead of like somebody reporting somebody for selling stuff illegally, they were all just doing it themselves. They were all involved in like black marketing and everything. There was just no discipline in terms of like criminal acts. They were all doing it just to survive.
Yeah. And that's what's so different between that era of the military and today's military. Like my dad is an Army veteran as well. And he and I talk about how different the military was in his time from what it is in our time now. And I imagine even since I've been out for, it's 2022 now, and I got out in 2016. So I've been out for nearly 6 years. And the people I see in now, I mean, the at least the Department of the Army has gone full woke. You know, it was heading in that direction when I was in the Army. I've served in 2 branches. I've been in the U.S. Marine Corps and the U.S. Army. Long story. You can ask me about it in the DM sometime. But my whole point with that being is how different the military is than what it was in the era where people were drafted versus where it's now where you volunteer to enlist. It's just there's something different. And yeah, the corruption I think is almost at a higher level now. It's not so much on the unit level or in the company level the way that it was back then, where people had their drug rings and crime rings going on at a low level, and you know their lieutenants were in on it too. I think it's you know, like I said before, if there were to be a split in the branches of the military, it would be at that dividing line of the Department of the Navy and the Department of the Army. If there's ever a civil war again, I think those two sides might be on opposing sides.
Interesting.
I want to return to something Tina said in relation to the politicians. You're right, Tina. Now is not the time for these politicians to be saying, well, maybe the lockdown and the masks and all of that and the compulsory needlecraft, maybe we should have a wee think about that. It was last year they should have been saying that. So this is why I agree with you, Tina. I smell a rat there. And as I said, it may be that they're trying kind of to make an advance motion against Varadkar just losing the run of himself in the House. I wouldn't trust them. I don't. The only one I'd almost trust, and I use the word almost, is Sharon Keoghan, and she's not in the Dáil anyway. You know, I'm going to open my drink. Cheers, everybody.
Cheers.
Cheers.
It's always wise not to trust a politician.
No, you can't go wrong. You will never lose if you don't trust a politician. That's
Tina being from Belgium, Brussels, you know, that must be a country because of the EU and NATO and everything based there. And everything based there, it must be absolutely saturated in bureaucracy and civil servants.
I think that the reason Belgians are so in love with their politicians is because there are more politicians than that there are actual Belgians. That's a joke that often goes around here because it's true. Every family has at least a politician or a staffer somewhere in the family. And they all want to suck up, of course, because they think they can get some benefits, which is, of course, ridiculous. It's not true. Because if that would be the case, then, I mean, there would be no exceptions. Everybody would be getting these benefits. They delude themselves into thinking this.
And when people slag off the EU, they always refer to as Brussels. And yet people in Belgium are probably treated no better than anyone else in Europe. You know, it's like it's a handy ruse for them. We never heard them say Strasbourg. There's 2 parliaments, Brussels and Strasbourg, but you've never ever heard them say Strasbourg. It's always Brussels.
Yes, but that is because one of the spearheads of the EU movement, let's call it, was a Belgian. It was a politician, Guy Verhofstadt. He could not get elected again, no matter what he did. It wasn't even legal for him to run in any kind of office anymore. So what he did was collect politicians all across Europe who were in a similar situation as him and start the EU. Then they said, all over Europe, okay, we're going to have a referenda because they are binding and we will stick to the outcome of the referenda. And then, of course, in the end, they don't stick to the outcome of the referenda because everybody said overwhelmingly, no, we don't want this bullshit. And the response was, well, it is legal to not stick to the outcome of a referenda because what you're going to do about it? That was the message.
Most of the early EU were all Nazis anyway. You know, the ones that avoided Nuremberg were actually the ones that set up the EU.
With regard to the couple of Irish politicians mentioned and others of their ilk who might be doing a sort of, you know, speaking out light kind of thing at the moment, what do we think the motivation is there? Is it you know, usually in these situations, it's something as mundane as self-interest, because the point was made that it's starting to affect them personally. Maybe they're just looking to their future prospects. They're trying to get ahead of the curve of history after being behind it for so long.
Yep. Yeah, I think it's the same as the animal normies who a year ago would have wanted to burn our houses down, and this year are going, oh, maybe those types have a point. You know, it's the same thing. It's like get with the winning team.
That's right.
I want to talk about a very interesting dynamic that I meant to talk about in one of my daytime videos, and I haven't talked about it. And maybe Christian and Carl, you've noticed this too.
Go on.
When you go to Twitter or the comment section or Facebook, and you get people that are the most pro-government, a male I'm talking about, the most pro-government narrative on the whole thing, right? And on the needlecraft and everything. If you go to their Facebook page or their Twitter page or their social media page, they're always the same kind of archetype. Irish, suburban, short cropped hair. Not only that, they all have an obsession with British soccer. They'll have as their banner Liverpool, Arsenal, Man United, Chelsea, and Leeds especially. And you look at their life, there's nothing else to them. They like watch English soccer and they do exactly the same thing. And I followed some of these carefully that I said that's weird. They go with the winning team and they think that the government and the needlecraft side are the winning team. And they go with them and support them like a football team. And I saw some very interesting comments from them that their obsession with supporting the team that's the biggest winner, that's the only reason they're supporting British teams and not Irish ones, but going with the winner is because they'd say things like the J&J is great, but the AstraZeneca will be the one to finally nail it. And you can see that they looked at the needlecraft manufacturers like they were players on the football market. It was really interesting. And then it dawned on me then, these guys support the narrative because they see they're only obsessed in life with being on the winning team. Right. Like that's why, it's and they have this, they bring that sort of like TV football thing. They watch TV Spellbound and they watch British soccer and they go Liverpool, Man United. Oh my God, they're amazing. They're my team, even though I don't even know. I couldn't even find the city they play in on a map. And they're the same with the needlecraft. The government is the one that has the most media, the most power, the most money. Well, we support them like a team. And that was brought home to me by the way they would talk about the different needlecraft types. They talked about them like players on the actual market. And it was an amazing insight how similar they all looked, how their Facebook media pages all were, how there was always like in a kind of a straightforward normie relationship with a woman and a kid. There was absolutely nothing about them that was authentic. Every single thing about them was find what's popular in this world and support it because that's your team, no matter where they are from. And that's why they supported the government so vehemently on the whole lockdown and everything, because they perceived that as the Man United or the Liverpool of policy.
That's correct, actually, Thomas. I noticed the same thing. It's funny. I don't know why it is, but I do notice for some reason I pick up on generic people. We've noticed that thing with the really thick black. Yeah, the archetypes with the really thick black glasses, the same haircuts, same pasty, weird textured skin that they have, and so on. And you're correct.
Avid cyclist. Don't forget they're avid cyclists.
yeah. Then they going whichever way the wind blows, because of course they are cowards and they will go wherever the safety is and where they believe the numbers are. Right. So that's correct.
And glory hunters. Because they're non-achievers, James, because they're non-achievers. Sorry, Tina. They're non-achievers in their own lives. So by attaching themselves to something big, they're winners. They're achievers.
Achievers. Yeah. So like it's like so basically when we start winning a little bit, they start coming over to our side slightly. That's kind of where they go. They don't want to go there, but they want to be seen wherever the strongest are, somewhat. The problem is they don't understand us. There's a big difference.
That's right. Thomas made a point some time ago, a year or so ago, that they don't have a memory. They really don't seem to be able to remember things. They only remember the last thing they're told by my favorite pet hate, RTE. And it's as Thomas said, it's about being on the winning team. I have a prediction, and I'll be interested. I mean, I'm dominating tonight a bit, so I'll shut the fuck up in a wee second. And I'd be interested to hear what Carl has to say as well, because Carl was on fire 2 weeks ago. Carl was just brilliant 2 weeks ago. But I think that there could be terrible violence, and I don't want to be particularly alarmist here, but we're dealing. Those of you who don't know the Republic of Ireland would be following what Thomas has said primarily, that they have taken it for the past 18 months, more or less like members of a cult. But when you have a situation that breaks, and it hasn't happened here yet, I think it's cracking, I think we're seeing fractures, but when it breaks, then they go nuts. And that very kind of dormant and conservative and stable society that the Republic of Ireland is, that could flip over. Yeah. And the culture that is presently quite docile and quite happy to take instructions from Gardaí or that kind of thing could suddenly go wild. And it could be those type of people Thomas described and James described, suddenly following a different, even possibly if we want to be occult about it, the jinns infect them, because as Thomas said, they're different species. Mm. I said it before at the start of 2021. I noticed around the Capitol building incident on the 6th of January 2021, I said, we're not going to be reconciled with them. We're not, you know, they're not us. They're different from us, you know, and that reconciliation, it's not going to happen. So this is where I see the possibility. I mean, as I said, I don't want to be too alarmist, but I do see the possibility of terrible violence, or indeed the possibility of mass suicide or mass deaths happening from other secondary forces, you know. Carl, would you?
Well, sorry, Carl, I just want to apologize to Tina for cutting her off then.
Yeah.
I'm sorry for that, Tina.
Well, that's all right. I just had a one-liner.
Okay. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to be rude.
Well, it's all good. I like these little chats, you know. There's a bit of conduct and all this carry on that goes with them as well. I rather enjoy that. But I have an ability to go and offend several different archetypes of the sophist when it comes down to it, you know. Here's the thing, okay? I don't come across normie men as much. I'm not really following the same kind of channels that they're on. I look at the geeky side of Facebook when it allows me to go and look at it, essentially. So I end up coming across these along the same kind of paradigm to what you were saying before, Thomas. These guys are kind of like, they're going with what's popular. They're going with what's going to make them look good in the broad mass consensus of things. But in the hobbies, in the geekier hobbies of the world, essentially. And they just infest the place all the time. But when I do happen to go and come across some particular outliers, okay, and dip into like FM 104 comment sections, this has happened a few times. I think I talked to Tina about it this one time. I ended up getting into a bit of a tangle with a healthcare worker. I was trying to be articulate and trying to get my point across as to why we don't need lockdowns so much, so often anymore, not to be inconsiderate of people who are immunocompromised or anything, but less like for the people who are healthy, let's go start doing things normally again, you know, liven up the entertainment sector and the hospitality sector. So she was just getting really vicious with me. And ended up saying, "Oh yeah, let's just go to the same concert together. Yeah, announce what you're gonna go to, so I can go up there and get you." This is a healthcare worker, by the way, and she used her alternative account to say this. Get up to there, yeah. Just say what you're gonna go to, so I can show up to the same one and then give you COVID. And then I just turn around to her and say, "Here, I've just been trying to be nice this entire time, so get out of here, you wagon." And because I called her a wagon, I got a 30-day suspension. And another guy, before that, this was about a few LGBT issues in the LGBT lobby, as you can see in Ireland. So this should be interesting for you, Christian. And these kinds of guys, okay, this one was really, you know, trying to go and, you know, he had long hair, a bit of a tall kind of dude, you know, really looking out there, looking active and all this kind of carry on. Bit of a hippie. It's all right, though. So yeah, they were all out in support of, you know, some sort of bloody organization in Ireland based around this you know, the LGBT lobby, essentially. And I just said, like, Well, here, you're kind of looking a little bit suspicious there. You're kind of looking a little strange there. I can't say I agree necessarily with your point of view. And then I looked a little. Then he's starting to get a little irate with me. Then I looked at him and I looked at his account. He lives in California. He doesn't even live in Ireland, and he's trying to talk about the Irish discourse and Irish politics and our attitudes towards, all of these cultural issues. He doesn't even live here. They always do this. So when I called him out, then I got another 30-day suspension. They don't like this. They don't like actually being examined for what they are.
It's like BLM is all made up of rich white guys.
Oh yeah,
women, rich white women.
And none of them have any black friends or anything like that, or have never worked. I mean, and it's a slave master mentality. We're their spokesperson. They do what I tell them to do.
Oh yeah, and they like to just have those alt accounts a little bit here and there, just to go and completely shut down what they see as the most popular place of all discourse, the only place where it really matters, Facebook and Twitter, essentially. There's an encroaching culture of censorship that they're always trying to do, but they don't realize that there is a continuing growing set of platforms that people can go and express themselves freely on, and not without any great degree of contempt or hatred towards other people. It's just like they're critical of the actual structure of things themselves. And I've noticed a few things as well. For one thing, I think the left-right dichotomy and the little games that they're playing there, you think it might keep on going for who knows how long. I don't see much fate in it. Hey, Josh.
I want someone to fucking murder me right now. Can someone please fucking murder me? It took me like 20 minutes to get that shit restarted.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
I fucking hate computers. Like, I hate anything that's modern. I hate modern technology. I hate computer shit.
Joshua, say a prayer for the nerds, because their legacy is hell. I've said this before. Their legacy, they will inherit wages of sin.
Burn in the
they will inherit the wages of sin
for all eternity, and their screams of anguish are echoed back to their fucking weird descendants with pink hair.
This thing is about the nerd spaces is that they don't like exceptionalism either. They need to keep it mediocre as well. Same diff.
So the riff off is this.
I hate nerds. I hate vegans. I hate hippies. I fucking hate vegans. I fucking hate vegans. I fucking hate vegans. I'm like really mad right now. I'm like really fucking mad.
So someone told me that the Iroquois word for vegan is fuckers who can't hunt.
Yeah. All right. Again, let me just put that out there for everyone. Hey, hold on. Again, let me just put that out. Hold on. Again, let me just put that out there to everybody on the show. Just make sure that you. I do have to go back and edit this so we don't get kicked off of Facebook or YouTube or something. So yeah, just remember all the vernacular, needlecraft, all that stuff. And then if you're going to say anything that's going to trigger any of the other algorithm stuff, just don't.
I try not to.
Yeah. Thank you.
This isn't my private DMs with Tina. I can't say what I want to say.
Yeah, keep it there.
She knows what I mean.
Carl,
yeah.
Can I just pick up something that you mentioned there? All the alphabety spaghettis and the multicolored banner friends of ours and the pretendies, every single one of those, before I crossed the bridge to Twitter heaven, I really crossed the bridge to Twitter heaven about static electricity in certain body parts. That was my crossover to. The alphabetis, every single one of the alphabeti spaghettis every one of them had me blocked on Twitter for the past 3 years. I'll let that one sit. Every one of them had me blocked on Twitter for 3 years. So they're watching.
Yeah, at the same time, I'm just thinking, I see absolutely no relevancy if I'm going to be looking at things professionally to ever take anything on Twitter seriously. There is no need for everyone to go and just flock there as the establishment. There's absolutely no need for it.
There's no as to why Jack Dorsey left the site.
Oh, because it has to, Joshua. That's what I think. Whoever's in charge and whoever's left, whoever's taken up the mantle, he's even more censorious than.
I got a lifetime ban for just starting a poll.
Well, memes were the only thing that were keeping Twitter going, and now that memes are going to be banned off of Twitter, like Twitter is basically going to die. Like,
well,
it's not going to exist anymore.
I was going to say you can't even write anything of substance there without running out of words.
Precisely.
You know? Yeah, because what is it? I think you get
it was
like
only
what?
funny when Trump was there. Trump was like terrorizing them, which is I found it endlessly amusing.
There are a body of different kinds of communities, artist communities, comic book and writer communities as well. He tried not to go and trip off the TOS or anything, and they absolutely could just go and completely migrate and leave the place. Even the people who are into their pornography, they could just like leave that entire platform, strip thousands, millions of people would just be gone overnight if they had a better alternative that could work just as well. Without any stigma or association with it, and this, I'm surprised that no one's really copped that yet. But when that happens,
what's the latest that Truth one that we all registered for? I haven't heard much from it lately.
Huh?
Did you ever hear about this called Truth Media or something?
Truth Social.
Yeah, that one. Yeah.
Nah, I heard a little bit
of that lately.
I heard that Trump was getting a little bit sorted out with that and building it up and such, but there's also Getter. Getter is another one that they have going. There was one a few years ago before it even ended with the presidential election. You see,
Gab?
Yeah, no, it wasn't Gab. I know enough about Gab.
Gab is full of born again Christians. That's the only.
Yeah, it is. It really is.
Still, the best thing ever on that. Best thing ever on Twitter was Covfefe, because that was like something he probably did when he was reaching for his phone and accidentally sat on it or something. But it just became like this magical spell. Covfefe.
Oh yeah,
it still makes me laugh.
He used Twitter like a magic wand. He just had to. You could see he was actively trolling them. Because he knew like 10 million social justice warriors would be put off their breakfast that morning. It was genius. It was beautiful to behold when it was at its peak.
Oh yeah.
Well, I remember seeing an interview with Piers Morgan once, and I know occasionally I might watch it. When he's good, he's okay, and when he's bad, he's absolutely terrible. But he does say some things now and again. And he was talking about some time that he spent with Trump, oddly enough, going back to Trump there. And it was his second interview with Ben Shapiro, I think it was. Anyway, he said that Trump told him, this is Piers Morgan, told him that when he gets up in the morning, he watches all of his televisions. And if he doesn't like what he sees, he'll just make some outrageous tweet, whatever it is. And then he'll just go about his day. And that's basically it. That literally the magician at work. He just makes something outrageous and he would go about his business like he'd never even done it. And he would have them running around like headless chickens all day, the lefties, whatever. And he would just carry on like he never did anything at all. It was great.
Would you make about the power?
Needlecraft.
Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah, sorry.
God damn it.
Yeah, so that's, possibly because he knows what the score is and where it's going, what it's actually about. I'm not even really sure he's doing it to promote it for corporate reasons. It's hard to say.
He's not promoting it. It's just like I said in the beginning, like, I don't care who takes it. It's their own personal choice. And that's his choice to take, and that's the end of it. I don't see him forcing it on anybody.
No, I mean, he would, he didn't care what he said when he was in office. What's he going to, is he going to change outside of office? I don't know. So it's hard to say.
I think a lot of people thought he was going to be some kind of crusader against the needlecraft. He just took it and he was okay with it. But I don't know why these people are giving him a hard time over it compared to what Biden did with the 100+ employee mandate. That was absolute and utter despicable. Carry on.
They need their dichotomous pure archetypes going against each other. The tragedy of dichotomy, it's they need that. They need to be something pure on their end, and that's
that's what it seems like. As for Trump being invested in it or whatever it happens to be, I'm not even really sure that matters at all. most of those people are having the wrong conversation about it entirely anyway. I mean, I think I was talking to Christian about this the other day, and at the end of the day, they've had people talking and having a discussion about something that really, it comes to nothing. You're talking about something that they still didn't isolate, being tested by something that doesn't work, which they openly said doesn't work. We know that they're making variants up as they go, of course. And of course, the different needles that they keep introducing, they keep admitting that they don't actually work. It's just kind of like this weird discussion that about this weird sort of viral thing going around that nobody can really prove is actually going around. When people actually run the tests, there's different categories of a corona anyway, and most of them come up as a cold. So that's in the PCR test, the preliminary chain reaction test is not meant to be used for that kind of thing in the first place. It doesn't work. It's on a class 1 recall anyway, since July this year, I think it is. So what did they do? They just thought, well, sure, we'll just carry on using it then, shall we? The real discussion really is just that they just want people to take it. That's all they care about, and means to an end. Christian's spoken about it more than enough. It's the
loyalty scheme.
Yeah, the loyalty scheme, basically.
Let's keep it to the code language. Everybody, please keep it to the code language. We don't need this shit. We really don't need this shit, guys. Please keep it to the code language in all instances, if possible. I see there's a bird on the telephone line in County Sligo. It's something. A telegraph pole has fallen down in County Sligo or something.
Oh yeah, Thomas is gone. Yeah, for the time being. So yeah, I wanted to go back to something Carl said a little bit ago and pivot the conversation in a different direction. Carl, you mentioned something about that Twitter and Facebook are kind of like the only reality that matters to people nowadays. And something that Timothy and I were talking about this morning is another thing that they're starting to force on people, especially the children, is this new kind of metaverse thing where it's like the internal world that we all have as magicians and occultists and people like that. We all have this great internal world that we're developing, and it's like with the newest generation, they've taken away that ability to have an internal world by making it so that the only internal world they have exists kind of here on the phone and everything, and will soon be existing on the Oculus goggles and everything, where they're going into the metaverse. So it is kind of scary, this idea that taking away the internal world of someone and substituting it with social media, where it's like, I know all of us are really invested here in what's going on Facebook with our group and with YouTube with all the videos that Thomas and we put out here on the channels. But it's like the ability to create an internal world for people is being stripped away by substituting it for social media, Twitter, and then this metaverse thing that's going to be coming out, where it's very appealing to all the younger kids who are playing these what are they called? Massive multiplayer online games.
MMORPGs. Yeah. This is the thing. Sorry, go on, Tina.
I want to interject something, Carl. A couple of years ago, I think it was 10 years ago and probably more, something like Second Life came into existence.
Yeah.
And I had, when I still had a full-time job, I wanted to make some extra money online, and I started to handle in Sims, so buying them and then renting them out and then converting that online money back to regular money. And the same people that are now those the alphabet people, they infested that place like you wouldn't believe it. These people have no life; they have no inner existence whatsoever. The only thing they have is jumping on the popular, what they perceive as popular. And outside of that, there was nothing. And it was only online. So that has always existed. And I kind of think that Second Life was the testing ground for that. Yeah. How easy it is to have people drawn into a virtual world. And it is easy for a certain kind of people. People like us, it has no appeal. We will get bored out of our minds in no time.
Yeah, and like you said, Tina, about it appealing to a certain people, it's like they're trying to create that type of people with the youngest generation that don't have an internal world.
Am I gone?
Oh, no. I see you. Your face is standing there frozen. Are you still there, Tina?
Was a little roboty the last few seconds.
I'm still
but-
here.
Okay.
and stuff.
Yeah, there's me running my cursor over her face as if she's going to start moving again. I don't know why I do that. Did you feel the tickle? Yeah.
I did. Thank you, James.
Yeah.
I appreciate it.
Yeah, you're welcome. Yeah.
One of us hasn't spoken yet, so I want to give him a chance to. But I just want to wrap up this little thing real quick. They've been playing with this idea, this transhumanist idea of creating the people and creating this aspect of the self through digitization and through this idea of the metaverse for a long time. They've been playing with it for a long time, introduced it in media for several years now. A particular show that's, well, a lot of people like it, but I've got no time for it. It's called Sword Art Online. I really don't have any time for it. I think its writing is subpar. The main character is he's just a goody two shoes. It's just something unrealistic about the whole lot of it, you know, but even in the way that they're approaching it.
He's a Gary Sue.
He is a Gary Sue.
Yeah.
Thank you, Joshua.
No, I've seen. I actually used to be a big fan of it, and now I'm not really that into it anymore because.
Yeah, like you gotta go put it. Here's some. The real world, when it comes to dual wielding weapons, you gotta practice that a long time. You don't just get it. No, It's not a power up. You don't just like get it bestowed on you. These are practical core skills, and how they draw people into this digital world is through this idea of like these incredible physical feats.
Yeah.
But there are things you can pull off even in the physical real world that are actually really exceptional by the basis of martial arts and such. But they've been playing around with this transhumanist stuff for a long time, and I don't think it's actually as good as they think it is. That's the definite thing, because I look at the caliber of storytelling, how these people are going about it, how they're trying to push this concept along. For one thing, it looks crap. Metaverse looks crap, okay? Like, you have VR chat, and people like are complete freaks of nature on VR chat, and that has problems as a platform as well. But they role play it. Sorry, go on.
Have you seen that video of that couple who literally got married in the metaverse? Like, they literally got married in the metaverse, and they had like fake digital guests and stuff like that, and it was like really weird. That sounds really weird.
That sounds really staged.
Yeah.
Really staged. I don't even know anyone who actually can afford that technology right now. That's
it's
something
like their god is Mark Zuckerberg.
Their god is the god of the machine. Yeah. And I've come across that in 40K and such. You know, it's just like this grand little omniscient, this creation that's AI but not AI at the same time. And actual AI itself is something that is scorned in that story universe. But like, everyone in this real world loves AI for some strange reason, yet they don't really have the ability to truly understand it or comprehend it. I was watching the Colette of Learning video about New Year's actually, and yeah, he was just talking about one of the great delusions of time, and one of them happens to be, you know, this idea of this transhumanism cult. This is the thing. They just don't get it. They think that it's all going to be like a complete digital transference or a technological transference of humanity into the machine. I don't think it's going to work. They're just going to end up hurting a lot of people if they really start taking it seriously. Whereas if you look at actual prosthetics and such and that kind of thing, well, we already did have that in Irish mythology with Nuada Silverhand, Nuada Argetlov, and he was a man of standards. You know, he was the High King. He earned that place because he was a badass, and he managed to go and be wise, and he managed to go and, you know, be really exceptional in physicality. And you know, then he lost his hand. That's why he was not High King anymore. And when he gets that arm back, you know, that physical thing is just like, yeah, I'm back in now. You're crap. I'm the best. I'm good. I'm gonna teach. I'm gonna rule this entire nation for 20 years because you're 7 years with. It's just an ancient and very interesting story. We already had the idea of artifice. You know, the idea of technology making man better. And it was a nice, positive relationship that went with our natural instincts instead of being something that's just overriding and consuming all of us. So, I mean, that's something in people's understandings. I think they can get a little better. But sorry. Yeah.
I'm not sure we can strip people of their inner lives, but I think we can convince some people that their inner life is some kind of lie, some kind of like Plato's cave type shadow, and that the real reality is this, the 3D materialist reality, and that's all there is. However, there is the idea of thought forms, tulpas, the idea that there are more bodies on Earth than there are souls. I talk about this extensively. A guy called Jason Horsley, who's very, very good in this area, an interview we did entitled, "What if there are more, what if some people out there in the world are not like us?" And the idea was that, and this is not some kind of elitist talk, it's just talking about different types of creature, that those of us here conversing, if not all of us and most of us, are some kind of entity that does have an inner life and recognizes that realizes how valuable it is. And a lot of other entities look like us, but they're not like us fundamentally, and they don't have an inner life. And they're the people that would fall prey very easily to this manufactured inner life of VR, of transhumanism, all the stuff that you've just been talking about.
I think consciousness is definitely a wavelength.
That kind of reminds me, because I binge watched the Lord of the Rings trilogy Christmas Day because I was trying to like cleanse my palate of modern Hollywood, and I was actually kind of reminded of the Uruk-hai, Saruman the White's manufactured army, and he literally he basically used like dark sorcery and genetic engineering to create a fake race that was part human and part orc, and they were basically completely mindless. They were completely soulless, and they did whatever the hell Saruman told them to do. And they were literally created just to be like used as a weapon against Rohan. And that kind of reminds me of like all of the NPC types that exist today. Like they almost seem like they've been manufactured in the lab, like they weren't born naturally or something like that.
Yeah, we mentioned the term recently a couple of times, reincarnated farm animals.
Yeah.
They're in human bodies, but actually they're sheep, or I mean, pigs are highly intelligent, but they're sheep or pigs or cows or whatever it happens to be, chickens, and they're not quite sure what the hell's going on. Oh, look, I've got all these abilities. I don't know what I'm doing or what to do with them.
It makes me wonder, like, about when it comes to the AI and the singularity, I don't think there's any such thing. Either we put our consciousness into the singularity, or some other being entity possibly gets in. But if you're dealing with NPCs, there's no consciousness in them either. Like even people maybe like Elon Musk and Bill Gates, they got no inner consciousness. So maybe, I don't know, are they relying on actual people with souls to put their consciousness in AI to actually give it a singularity, to give it a soul, do you think?
Well, I wonder if you're onto something, because, I always wondered if you were a fly on the wall, what it would be like just to observe them for a couple of hours a day in their house. How boring would they be? Literally.
You'd die of boredom. You'd die of boredom. It would be, yeah. I'd rather sit in a dark room. Honest to God, I mean, you'd die of boredom having to observe them. No thanks.
Well, most of them seem to be more comfortable living as a cartoon avatar than they do. Honestly. Yeah. You're not even sure if they are real or not.
The disconnection. Do you not think that's part of the disconnection process, the creation of the avatars that's always being pushed on the social media?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a very schizoid thing.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe the singularity is a fantasy of theirs. Then it's just actually not possible,
Mm-hmm.
Well, it is impossible, definitely in that respect, Robert. Although I do still think that consciousness as a wavelength, and you know, there are methods and mechanisms within biology and chemistry and, you know, a bit of physics as well, where they are essentially trying to go and keep people at a specific frequency. When it comes to the NPCs as well, when it comes to these, I don't want to end up dehumanizing people really, but I'm looking at this idea of a diminished form of man and of woman, and I can't help but think that, like, there's something of a kind of a nurture product going along with that, and it is through the consecutive amount of nurture processes that has been past 100 years that we've ended up with the level that we're at now. If that makes any sense.
Yeah, maybe they're relying on us. Maybe they're relying on people with consciousness to actually focus on AI and actually give it a singularity, give it a soul. You know, maybe PCs are useless. They can't do it. Bill Gates and the likes, they have nothing. Maybe they're hoping we do. Or as I think, as Thomas suggested and many other people, there is an actual, you know, non-physical entity, some kind of, you know, demon or whatever gets in there and actually becomes it. But yeah, it's just a good point.
I think you're onto something there, Robert, though, because they've always been after, it kind of reminds me of that weird Jungle Book concept, you know, they're after man's fire or something like that, but they just can't seem to get in there. You know, they don't have it. They want to know what it is. They're obsessed with it. They can't own it. You know, they can't be it. But they do want everybody in their own version of what they see it is, by the looks of it, because they're just envious little shites. That's what they are.
A friend of mine here years ago, 3 or 4 years ago, who's not even interested in kind of like, you know, 40 and stuff or anything like that, made an observation that was very in that way in her own vernacular and language. And she perfectly described the Men in Black without, she didn't even know what the Men in Black really were from the ufology, not interested in that kind of thing. She's a smart woman and everything. And she said, Thomas, do you ever notice that there's a huge number of people out there who can't figure anything out? They do it by observing other people. And this is what you mean. Well, it says you actually, she says, in her job, she has to go out and go to lunch with people and things like that, clients or people like that. And she says, they'll often observe me if there's a certain kind of dish in front of them, what fork I pick up first, or how I do it. And she goes, you start to notice these people, that they're watching everything that you do. They have no ability of common sense to figure out, okay, that goes there. They literally need signposts to everything in life that teach them what to do, because they have no intuitive ability to look at it and say, you know, they look at a tap and they would say, well, a normal person would look at that, okay, water comes out, how does it come out? Well, maybe that device on top of something to do with it, and you play with it and it opens. They would wait until they saw someone else using it before they would walk over to the tap and then turn it on. And there's and she said, there's huge numbers of people like that they learn everything in life by copying someone else. They can't figure it out or do it themselves. And she was describing to me uncannily the Men in Black stories that the likes of, what's his name, who wrote the Mothman Prophecy, described them as being, saying that like they would go into a restaurant and they would try to eat steaks with a spoon and it wouldn't work. So they were like the cocky version of what you're describing, James. They would like try to eat it with a spoon and then it wouldn't work. So they'd look around and see someone using a knife and a fork, or have a waitress at the show, no, this is how you eat it. And she was describing them people perfectly. And she says, I would say they're like probably half society. And in the last 3 years, I've come to the conclusion, she's probably right. There's at least half society doesn't know how to do anything. It has to have instruction given to it. Now, this suggests to me, okay, just before I came back, you always saying, is it an empty vessel? Is it recently reincarnated farm animal? Is it a walking entity? I think it's all of the above in different stages. I think initially they're a reincarnated farm animal, they're an empty vessel, and if they don't get instructed by society, something jumps into them and starts running them, like you said, as envious little shits who operate and they can't quite figure out how we work. And I see a lot of that with the psychopaths as well. They're unbelievable observers. and they're literally gathering data on how to measure the mind of their targets and stuff like that. Well, these ones seem to less pathologically overtly because they're less individually orientated and more group orientated, but they absolutely seem like an alien army has jumped into all these skin suits and is looking at us and saying, what do they like? What do they do? Oh, go sports team, and those archetypes I was describing earlier on, those Irish fellas that I was describing earlier on, they all look like each other. They all have the same kind of lives and the same kind of homes, the same kind of way. And there's nothing authentic to them. And it's almost, you can see that they've completely taken their personality right down to how they slag people off or engage with people from another archetype that's the same to them. And it's really quite remarkable. So I do agree, it's all of the above. But what James said about them being envious little shits, I think there's I think a lot of witch hunts and everything have come from these envious little shits and stuff in skin suits.
Thomas.
Sorry, Kristen, go ahead.
Sorry, no. Greg, actually, I'll kind of include you in this. The Weekend Strange last week, and you were co-hosting with it. We didn't get the psychic weather from Thomas last Monday. So I had a special request. Would Thomas like to give us a quick psychic weather now?
I tell you, I would, but the reason I wasn't well last week, so I wasn't in a kind of a mental position to measure it.
Yeah.
So I will tomorrow for next week. But I probably wouldn't have called it correctly because I was I'm dealing with some severe stomach cramps and stuff. So tomorrow I'll do it.
Well, I'll give a psychic weather briefly now. It's very, very mild here in Dublin. It's autumn. It's still autumn here.
Oh, yeah.
And my feeling about that is that the pagan gods have decided to give the complacent, as we said, lesser souls of the Republic of Ireland, those ones you were talking about just there now, they're giving us a final break before things get nasty, because it's still, we haven't had a winter here where I live. And, what you resist persists. And I have a feeling that in terms of the real weather and the psychic weather, that it's going to get a bit chillier around here for quite a while. So that's my take on my local psychic weather. Sorry, Greg, you were going to say.
It was so mild. Sorry, it was so mild here today. There were mosquitoes flying.
It's incredible. And I see.
I'm jealous. It's like -14 where I am.
I want to be where you are.
No, I was swatting mosquitoes away today in January.
I see regrowth happening here. And my prediction, my take on the psychic weather where I live is that the pagan gods are giving us a little break before they decide to come down hard. In Ireland, and particularly some parts of Ireland, February can be really harsh. So they're giving us a final warning here. We're seeing it even in the Dáil. We're seeing it in the Shannon. We're seeing a much more fluctuating emotion around here at the moment. Now, sorry, Greg, I cut through you.
No, that was entirely appropriate to do so at that point. I was simply just going to briefly follow on with what Thomas was saying about, these entities that you were talking about, Thomas. That's all we can really refer to them as. We don't know what they are. And the question then is, are they actually human? It seems not. It's like Invasion of the Body Snatchers. You were talking about these creatures in terms of problem solving and observation and figuring out their environment. They are most unlike the modern humans that certainly what we can learn from of tens and hundreds of thousands of years of behavior, apparently, from the fossil record and whatever cultural artifacts are handed down, that whether modern humans are actually a product of evolution or not, that's a very controversial, interesting question. However many things that suggest we're slightly maladapted to being on this planet, the only creatures that have to wear clothes, for example, all the other problems that have been catalogued over the decades by various writers and researchers. We do seem to be able to figure out things by just like a lot of other animals on this planet do, by observation, by testing, natural curiosity, trial and error, and some kind of natural and innate creativity and drive, striving, towards survival, and actually doing better than that, eventually going beyond Maslow's hierarchy of needs into culture and creativity. But creatures you were talking about, they seem to have none of that.
Yeah, well, you see, this explains why I'm mute. Yeah, this explains why they support the government so vehemently in the last 23 months and why they support the team that won the biggest competition at the moment. Is because they're walking entities who need to adapt as much to society as possible. Then they have to go with the winning team under the assumption that the current like trend du jour of the moment, the current fad, the current phase, the current fashions, the current music, the current popular everything, by throwing themselves in with that somehow they will be less noticeable as being different and being amongst us. Like you see something like the TV show Friends, absolute garbage. I never understood why that show had any following. And yet I remember at the time Friends was popular, I was working in business both first in the US and then back to Ireland. So I was working in both in the corporate environment around when that show was at popular. And regardless of and the businesses I worked in, there was nationalities from all over the world working in them. No matter where they came from, it was the same archetype. The same people who loved Friends were the same kind of people who were desperate to be popular at any cost.
Mm.
And they talk about the show like it was the funniest thing in the world. And I was saying, there's not even jokes in that. There's just, oh, look, you ordered a pizza. You think they would cut it up straight. Canned laughter. And I was like, but it was because that show was pushed so heavily by the marketing and the media that was like, again, you're only into this because you think you're hedging your bets that you'll be more popular in society because you're with the winning team, this stupid TV show. And that to me was the first indication that this was some kind of other form of human that was amongst us trying to camouflage us. Because during World War II, during the Battle of the Bulge, the Americans found lots of Germans in American uniforms. It was really one of the most disgraceful things that the Wehrmacht did in World War II, was they took uniforms off dead American soldiers, and they went out into the American lines pretending to be Americans and shooting American troops in the back. And how the Americans would catch them would be sort of like, these guys had put on fake American accents, they spoke English excellently, and they catch them out on little things, and they say like, so have you followed the World Series this year? And they go, yes, yeah, great, really great. And he says they immediately would catch them because they were trying too hard to be Americans. And immediately they would jump on them and they would grab them and find that they were Germans in American uniforms. And they shot them all, of course. But the way they caught them was they were too eager to fit in. And that's what these types remind me of in regular society. Too eager. Now, I want to say something else. I've no psychic weather this week, but today is an auspicious moment for Beyond Room 313. We have our very, very first music video, and it's just dropped on the channel. It's a song that's called Sanguine Gnosis, and it was written and performed by a wonderful lady called Esther Simone Cluft Shepherd, and she lives in Holland. Beautiful voice, beautiful song, and you can guess what the thing is about with that name. But it's just dropped. Jason just put the link in the chats all there and everywhere. So check her song out after this. So we're a full entertainment spectrum here, not just 40 and everything else and movie reviews, but we're also putting out music videos now. So this is a great night for us. So I'm very happy with that. Thank you, Esther. And everyone is going to love your song.
Can't wait to hear it.
Isn't Friends shite? Isn't Friends total shite? It's just when you mentioned Friends, I started to laugh because it's beyond. It is the Leo Varadkar of sitcoms. All they did was plug it and plug it and plug it, and it was like Varadkar's. Oh, Leo's a ledge. Yeah. The same ones who say Leo's a ledge, actually, they are the same ones who like shite like Friends. They are the same ones.
Yeah. So like just. Some lump of lard walks into a bar and the whole fucking studio erupts into laughter just because he's just walked through a door,
The collectivists will always fascinate me.
Because they're like 10 times funnier.
Do you remember Happy Days? The fans would just walk in and go, hey, and then they'd be burst out laughing. I mean, I remember Krusty the Clown, and when The Simpsons was glorious back in the mid '90s, when The Simpsons reached its peak of greatness, and Krusty the Clown had fallen out of fashion, and because he was telling racist jokes, ethnic jokes, and the audience were shocked. And Jay Leno pulls him to one side, and he goes, "Well, Krusty, your kind of comedy doesn't work anymore because people don't have a sense of humor anymore." And explains to him, you have to talk about things like how you couldn't open a container of milk or make an omelet. They want situational stories that have no humor in them, and that's why you're finished, Krusty.
You guys see the recent South Park special on the on
Needlecraft, was it?
Yeah, the Needlecraft, everything that's been going on. It's like hilarious. It's like the funniest
But
shit.
they are the true bards. They're the true bards of our day. Like that thing they did about it, that's where they got the song for the Amazon Fulfillment Center. You got 16 tons, and they showed the whole of South Park is owned by Amazon. That was genius.
And then Cartman is like, the joke, like the main joke of the special was that Cartman, as an adult, ended up becoming like a really loving Jewish father. Because he's like really anti-Semitic as a kid.
They switched him around.
Yeah, they basically switched him around. Yeah.
No, South Park is like the last voice of kind of like comedy that's still out there, along with like Steve Hughes and people like that. But in terms of TV,
I am surprised South Park get away with a lot of what they do. Sorry, Greg.
No, I was simply going to say what Thomas was saying just now is, reminds me of comments that you've made previously, Thomas, about Bernard Manning, or perhaps over there in Ireland, Dave Allen. And maybe these are names that are not going to fly outside of the British Isles, but nonetheless, sort of that, when comedians made you laugh.
Yep.
I'd like to pull off a Dave Allen again, do something in that similar style, get up in a big old studio, just pull out a basic can of something and then just start waffling at people. I don't even smoke. I'd start smoking again just to annoy presenters in the studios. It'd be great.
He was a huge influence on me. I've used a lot of his stuff in my talks and stuff over the years, approaches, telling stories and stuff like that. Like I would be giving like at the AV lectures, I would be giving like heavy info, but then I would drop in funny stories, anecdotes. And I learned that from Dave Allen, that you can actually break up the tension by telling a funny story in between. And he really was an enormous influence on me and like just about everything I do.
I think that's one of the reasons why I like Joe Rogan so much, is because he gives a lot of useful information, and his guests do as well. But he's also a comedian. He's a professional comedian, so he's really funny. So he's like really easy to listen to. He's not like a boring lecturer that just kind of like drones on about something like for 3 hours straight. Like he's informative, but he's actually entertaining to listen to as well.
Yeah, we were saying that earlier on. A lot of us have come to like him a lot more now.
It's not that he's that much of an intelligent man himself, and at one point he did joke about, just like occasionally dosing other people full of drugs, just as a laugh, because that's his part of the world. It's just, I have no understanding of that, but it's just like spiking people for the laugh. God damn, that's ridiculous. But one of the things about it, particularly over his treatment over, the recent events with the Needlecraft and such, was that he did his own thing and they hate him for it. They absolutely hate him for it, And he's always been a bit of a blusterer as well, So you're never going to win anyone over with the intellectual capacity. Because he's not acting intellectual himself. It's rather the people who he has on that actually get things rather interesting.
And they hate him because he has lots of money too, and so they can't sue him. Like they can't do anything legally against him because like they can't get revenge against him because he's not like the average person with no money. Like he's got a ton of money. So if they try to sue him, he can just like reverse Uno back at them,
What do you guys think of Howard Stern going after anyone who was questioning the Needlecraft? I thought that was quite surprising.
Anyone who's going to try and play that game is they're hitch their wagon to a horse, or they've bet money on a horse and they're hoping it's going to turn out well. I've got to head off, guys, but I'll just leave those thoughts with you there at that.
See you, Carl.
Okay, see you later.
Bye-bye.
See ya.
Bye.
I'll take it easy.
The first time I met you, Thomas, was at the AV, be referred to Alternative Views, a series of conferences put on by the late Ian R. Crane. That was the one in Manchester. And that was the first time I'd seen you speak. And it was a really effective blend of, information, thoughts, opinion, but peppered with humor, like things to sweeten the bitter pill. And you mentioned Steve Hughes, and I'd recommend anybody listening to this check him out. He's from Ireland and spent a lot of time in Australia, if I remember rightly. Somebody I've met a few times in my career, and he's going to be my guest coming up very, very soon, actually. But it's a great way to deliver information. We were talking about Dave Allen, you talking about paedophile priests, but somehow making people have a bit of a nervous chuckle about it. So they're absorbing thoughts about the way the world works, but they're kind of being entertained at the same time. They're not being too deeply disturbed. I suppose that's the way Father Ted worked as well.
Yeah, was that at the Middleton Arena, that one?
Yeah, it was, yeah.
Was that, okay, was that the one where the audience, a guy tried to heckle me in the audience?
Yeah, and you slapped him down. Good.
I know, and the crowd chased him out. Apparently he was outside saying he was going to sue me and everything, and the security guys threw him out on the street.
What a loser.
That was actually the financial meltdown tour. It wasn't AV. That was the one with Max Kaiser and your man, John Perkins, Confessions of an Economic Hitman.
Yeah, and there was another guy. Was there a guy who was disabled that was there as well?
The guy wrote Gods of Money. He has a German-sounding name, but he's American.
Yeah, I know exactly. I just can't recall.
William Endall.
That's right. It was a good lineup. It was a good day.
Yeah. It was a very good day. But yeah, that was right. The guy. It was my very first ever big speaking gig, and a guy starts hassling me in this place of 1,000 people, odd plus in it. And
he said,
I said to him, eventually I just got enough, and I said, "Oh, fuck off, you're full of shit." And the audience just jumped up and went, "Yeah!" And they went, out. And I said to the security guys, they said, "Why didn't you come drag him out when he was hassling me?" And they said, "We couldn't do any more. You completely demolished him from the stage." It was very funny.
No, he said to you, remember when I was sitting about halfway up on the seats, and at one point, I think he stood up, didn't he?
He was disgusted. Yeah, he was like standing. He walked up to the stage, was pointing his finger at me, saying, "How dare you say that about Occupy?" Yeah,
you said, "I've got a right," something like, "I've got a right to question what you're saying, to challenge you." Yeah. And you said, "Yeah, but you don't have the right to come in here and be a fucking asshole," or something like that.
Yeah, that's right. And I said, also, they paid to hear me talk and not you. So
yeah.
I was like, I'd forgotten I was on a stage full of people, but it worked out great in the end because the audience just threw him out the door, basically. Went in at the deep end. That was a long time ago now. Must be like a decade.
Oh yeah, I'm getting on for that. But certainly, I mentioned Steve Hughes, and I do want to big the guy up because I think he's great. And he was on the symposium, Beyond Room 313 symposium, and that's people can find that very easily on the channel. Well worth checking out.
Yeah, he's brilliant.
Steve Hughes is really good at telling stories because he has that really good pause in between everything that he says. I think Dave Chappelle is actually very good at doing these days because he's very good at doing a very similar thing, isn't he? And they're both hilarious at the same time.
Yeah, and keeping a measured tone. I think that's really important. Who's that American comedian that is a young, well, he's not young now, but he's the black guy who was in Boys in the Hood. He was a big star about 20 years ago. I can't remember his name. But he'd have that same kind of pause thing, but then he starts screaming.
Chris Rock.
Chris Rock. Yeah, Chris Rock.
Yeah,
he understood the power of the pause, but then he would have this sort of thing where he'd start amplifying it, that kind of a thing. But this have it measured during the whole show. I think that's the best kind of comedy, stand-up anyway.
So, Timony, how are you tonight? We haven't heard from you at all.
I'm good. I was just listening. I don't know shit about politics, don't know shit about the military, didn't know anything about some of the people you guys were talking about. So I was just listening.
Well, on the topic of the psychic weather, it's got quite windy here tonight. But you know, there's quite a lot of localized wind here. But
sorry.
Is it that time of night already, Christian?
I see I have a common audience. I see suddenly we've down market audience this evening. Yes, very good. But no, Timony, I just thought you might like to contribute because we didn't hear much from you at all tonight.
Oh yeah, I was just listening. I guess so. I did have this really interesting dream last night. I don't know if any of you guys. I had to write it somewhere right away this morning, and I felt like it was a good one that was could be relatable to the tribe and others. So I just posted it online instead of writing it in a journal. It wasn't it wasn't a very long dream at all, but in my dream, I was in a room and I was looking out over an empty field and it was nighttime. And in my dream, I just had this kind of low grade sadness feeling, not depressed really or anything, but I was just looking out over this field, and to the right of me, and the room was very dark. To the right of me, there was a person that sort of manifested and appeared there, and I couldn't see them. They were kind of made out of a shadow. And I wish that I could remember what they said to me, but I just remember that they pointed out the window for me to look out over the field. And when I looked out over the field, there were animals and they were all made of fire and they were playing. There was a bear, a wolf, an eagle, and one more. I wrote it down. And they were all playing. And I just remember being like, are you seeing this? And the other thing too is I didn't know if I was awake or asleep in my dream. I couldn't tell. So I was talking to the person that was there and I asked if they were seeing it as well. And they didn't say anything. They just kept pointing. And so I looked, and at one point they all stopped, the animals stopped playing and they just stared at me. And I don't know if you've ever made contact with anything, eye contact in a dream with anything, but it's really fucking intense. And I got the warmest feeling that I've had in many years of just comfort and recognition and acknowledgement. And I woke up from that dream feeling so much better. And it was a real, like I could extrapolate on that for my own personal stuff and kind of, figure out things with that. But then I just felt too that was a really big recognition for everything that we've all been going up against, together and individually, as the tribe and further. There's some recognition there that, there's some real fucking elemental forces and psychic shit on our side.
Do you want me to give an interpretation of that dream? Because I'm very interested in dream interpretation.
Yeah,
that was a positive dream. And even before you came to talking about feeling warm and waking up, I was going to say that's actually the animals are on fire. You're standing alone and looking. But what it actually is possibly a sense of us and individually growing as stronger people who are able to deal with a society both nationally and internationally that we're watching fragment. And, we're going to cope. We said this last week. We've said this before. We will cope with this. And Thomas actually did a really good video today in which he was saying, don't gaslight yourself by listening to too much mainstream media and then saying, oh, there's an RTE and even people in the tribe can have a tendency to allow the mainstream media to gaslight them. Don't. And I do believe that what you've described there is the sense that we are now on a voyage of our own, that we've become separated from those other ones we were talking about earlier tonight, and that it'll be okay.
Yeah, and it was really interesting because the animals weren't on fire, they were made of fire.
Yeah, I got the picture. I understood what you meant. They weren't burning to death.
No,
they were animals of fire. No, I understood that.
Yeah.
And what we were witnessing there, you were witnessing a very intense situation, for good or for bad. As a pagan myself, I've explained I don't believe in objective evil or objective good. I believe that the evil comes from the deeds that people do of their own free will. So we don't have a messiah, we don't have a devil, but we do have the supremacy of free will. What you were watching was intense, but it wasn't necessarily evil or good. But you were reaching your own conclusion about it and saying, well, that's what it is, and I'll still cope and it'll be okay. I'm not trying to be patronizing or to kind of be sanitizing of it. That's actually what I felt about that. This growing sense for all of us that we are moving on. And
well, yeah, that's why I felt comfortable sharing it, and why I did share it. It's like I can make my own stuff about it for myself, but it felt collective too. Like there was a message in it for others.
Oh yes, yeah.
Those are animals of power.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Strong archetype.
Yeah, symbolically, archetypally. You know, maybe the fourth one was maybe a horse. You know, who knows if you can't remember.
I'll look because I'm fucking retarded. Can't remember.
Or a bull.
No, it was a, hold on. See, this is why I wrote it down. A bear, an eagle, a deer, and a wolf.
Well, there you go.
You're also a fire sign as well.
Yeah, that's really interesting too. I didn't know that about those, but yeah, that would make sense. They're all made of fire.
They're all northern animals.
Yeah. So, yeah.
That's pretty significant. And maybe I read a book recently. It was actually about Freemasonry, but it was basically part history of Freemasonry and part introduction to it for newcomers as a spiritual path. And I've got no interest in joining a lodge or anything like that, but there are things to learn from many of these, ancient spiritual traditions. And at the end of each chapter, there was a little to-do list, do this, a little exercise, and just ways of integrating what you just read into your life. And one of the early things in the book was pay attention to your dreams.
Yeah.
Now, most of us who are interested in the dream sphere do that anyway. But I think at this particular time that we're living through, that would be something that we would do well to focus on. And what you shared today, I think, is very significant. I mean, as soon as I read it, I felt like, because some of the dreams I've had recently, I had the most powerful dream experience of my life while reading this book on Freemasonry. And, I've continued to have interesting dreams, sometimes disturbing and negative.
Yeah.
And some rarely just dreams that I used to have, what seemed to be very frivolous, silly, nonsensical, surreal, just somehow comedic dreams. Everything seems to have taken on a certain weight. Right. So it'd be very interesting to either incorporate this into the Week in Strange or just to think a little bit about this going forward, and maybe, some of the rest of us can report back anything that we feel
please do,
was meaningful to us,
Yeah, I'd love to hear that.
In August of this year. Sorry.
Well, I just wanted to share a dream I had. It was a couple of months ago, and it isn't anything extraordinary or anything, but it stuck with me because it was a very vivid dream, full-blown color, but I always have those, but these were particularly vibrant colors of a field of flowers that I found up a little alley here a bit further from where I live, full of mullein flowers. Now, I have never been up that street until tonight. Before I came on here, I went to have a little walk, but I dreamed of mullein flowers specifically. That same week, I went on a hike and I saw a field of mullein in a place where I just happened to hike. I just stumbled upon it and my jaw fell open like I saw this in my dream. But in my dream, it was a very small enclosure. It's just a small garden enclosure with some chicken fence. And tonight I went up there and that place looked exactly like it did in my dream, sans the mullein flowers then, but I had never been up there. I didn't know what that place looked like. You cannot see it from the street where you walk. But yeah, that was one of those dreams that stuck with me just because of that. And it wasn't anything special or prophetic even. It's just dreams and reality. They just,
when they
it
overlay
comes
like
together
that.
At some point. Yeah. Exactly. And that fascinates me so much because it proves to me that the world is strange.
Honestly, there's not really anything else that makes me feel more alive than when stuff like that happens.
Yeah, exactly.
In August, this August just gone out, I had the most traumatic dream of my life. And I won't say what was in it, but when I woke up the next morning, it completely transformed the project I've been doing in this house. It completely transformed everything I've been doing here. And I haven't thought that since then, well, it was a stupid or spurious dream, or that the insights that I got there. All I'll say is that I got an insight into what's coming. And it was such a vivid dream. It was a cohesive dream. It was, I can remember very clearly what everybody said in it and what everybody did in it. And all I'll say is when I woke up the next morning, it very much changed what I was doing here, and I don't regret that. So there's a lot of significance in dreams, you know. And again, it's the pagan thing. Don't see them as good or evil. Just see them as more objectively, I suppose, as a message.
There's this idea that life is a dream, and when you die, you wake up. I've always liked that. I've had that phrase in my head for decades, so I can't remember where I got it from, but it seems increasingly to make sense to me. I was listening to an interview with Rupert Sheldrake recently, Rupert Sheldrake and Graham Hancock in Dialogue. And Sheldrake said an interesting thing, and he was asked about his views of life and death and an afterlife. And he said that he felt that when we die, we keep, when we sleep, we wake up, okay, and in this body. When we die, when the physical body dies, we keep breathing, but we don't wake up because there's nothing to wake up into in terms of the physical body. And that waking up that we do in the morning is just us coming back into a physical body, and that the dream state is in this life is in some way preparing us for the ultimate reality beyond this life. So the dream state is saying, get used to this. This is what actually is. Then you'll wake up back into your body, and then you go about your, whatever it is, you're making your breakfast and go to work. So, but at some point, your body will die. You will continue, but you won't wake up in the sense that you've been used to, because there's nothing to wake up into anymore. I mean, that we came into this thing. There's so many traditions talk about this. We came into this thing for a short time to have an experience.
Yeah, like that.
Maybe this ties into what the Gnostics believe, that it maybe is really hell, and maybe we did something punishable, but the punishment is limited in perceived time. So we're just here to learn something, the error of our ways in a way, and then we get to go back.
Well, Greg, that's something the Scientologists say, what you came out with there. They, it's just the body is lent to us. That's all, I don't support Scientology, by the way. I'm an opponent of theirs, possibly maybe their methods and practices, among other things. But that is something, what you said there, Greg, resembles a lot of what Scientology comes out with.
Yeah, Greg, if you read Hubbard's early writings, you could see how that was corrupted. What that thing started out as and what it became was by means of intervention. I think the CIA or someone 100%. Took over, because what his early writings are shit hot. They're unbelievably good, 100%. And it's almost like they created this scandal around the whole thing to stop people from reading his writings. I really do believe that now.
Well, we know that he and a certain person, JP, I really do feel that they fragmented the matrix with all that shit they did in the desert, and it didn't go unnoticed.
I was going to say just one last thing about that is that it doesn't have anything to do with escaping this reality. It has more to do with the ability to reincarnate and have more ability in this reality, that this physical reality is more of like a playground or an open empty canvas for you as the artist to paint upon, and to be able to remove obstacles from your life in order to be a more effective or more artistic painter. And it has less to do with kind of that Gnostic point of view of escaping this, even though that's what a lot of people misunderstand. But again, coming from people that have never read Hubbard before, or that have only gone off of what Leah McHenry or any of the people that comment on it, that have the same, these are the same people that are coming and commenting on the Rona, and it's the same kind of media agents. But again, as Thomas has said, the early work that Hubbard wrote in the late 1940s up until circa probably 1951 is tremendous information, and it has a lot to do with reincarnation, and it doesn't have anything to do with escaping and going off anywhere.
It does make you wonder if he was murdered and replaced.
Yeah, and I've talked. Yeah, I'll leave it at that.
It takes time to manifest your intentions over here, doesn't it? As in the dream world, you manifest immediately. So maybe the key is to get more power over here and the lives that go by, so that you can manifest your desires. That's magic in a way, isn't it? With focus.
Absolutely, yeah.
But I think
I find that.
Sorry, Jane. It's Christian. I think you'd get a lot out of reading early Hubbard stuff. You should check it out. You'd be quite surprised. I was once very hostile too. And when I actually looked at what the early stuff he was coming out with, I was like, God, this guy is as good as like just about any of them. Gurdjieff and the rest, you know?
I have touched into it, and it was, I would say that documentary that you did about JP gave me a lot more insight. That's the best way I'd put it.
Well, we decided to be, well, we came in to be neutral on everyone, except him, because he'd been so, Parsons, because we both admired him greatly. But regarding anyone else, we weren't going to play the same old angle. It's just like, you know, I like to be neutral as possible. But I think if you looked into the early stuff, you'd be surprised, like I was, that you know, we're being sold a crock later on.
Yeah,
and it makes you wonder about early Christianity and everything else too. Sorry, Jade, go ahead.
No, it's fine. I was just going to say, sometimes I find it really hard to readjust being back here after being in the dreaming, because some of the experiences that I have there are so intense that it kind of displaces me almost. It feels that real.
Yeah, it is that real.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've woken up in dreams like that too. I don't know where the fuck I'm at, or like how my body's supposed to work. And it takes,
waking up is hard.
Trauma is waking up.
Yeah, and then the ones where you have a dream that you've died in the dream, and that wakes you up. You're like, holy shit.
Yeah, that's a trip too.
What?
Yeah. Yeah, that's the trippy one.
Had several of those. Yeah, they're intense.
I actually have a question for Christian. When you said that Jack Parsons fractured the matrix and it was noticed, by who?
The UFO thing, I think.
What?
Well, Jason and I kind of came to the conclusion that the Babylon working, which they did, ruptured reality so much that the UFO thing came out of it, because it happened and immediately began a few weeks later. But what compounds that is Marjorie Cameron, who was the primary focus of the Babylon working to create a Scarlet Woman who would produce a moon child. She knocked on Parsons' door, and she's one of the first people in the United States to have ever reported, in the world, to have ever made an official report about seeing a UFO. So the Babylon working worked. They brought the Scarlet Woman to the front door. They created a moon child.
And
then the UFO started appearing all over the world right after that.
And the other thing that occurred right after that is, if you look at the timeline, when Hubbard wrote his original thesis, it was right after he wrote that book, right after the Babylon working, and where he came forth with a map of the human psyche. Just like you could say the Kabbalah is a map of the human psyche, you could say that the I Ching is a map of the human psyche, and there are other paths out there through different cultures that you could say are a map of the human psyche. He came up with
Runes.
one. Say again?
Yeah, runes.
Runes, yes, whatever flavor it is. He came up with his own that was tailor fit to his kind of early mid 20th century naval intelligence officer psyche. It's like he had his own personal download from his point of view as a man from that era, with his kind of background with the linguistics, because again, like Crowley, he's a linguistic philosopher, you know, kind of at the basics of what they are as a magician. His philosophy as a magician came out in that form from his parlance, the way he speaks, that would make sense to kind of 1950s Americans. So if you read Dianetic's original thesis from that kind of point of view of a post-war era paradigm, it really does make sense, the same way that you can go, if you're interested in it, look at the Kabbalah and see the way that corresponds to the way things work with inside you. Tina with the runes and Jade with your path workings and everything. Everybody's got their own practice. So he, with his Babylon working, with his half of the Babylon working, that's what he downloaded. And I'm sure Parsons was on fire at that point, and something happened that compromised, I think, both of them. In my opinion, I think Hubbard was either killed off or walked in sometime around the same time when Parsons died in 52 in June. That's about the same time that people have written about that Hubbard might have either went away or went away and never returned. And there's a body double or a couple of body doubles where it's been written that there were 3 different Hubbards with 3 different coat sizes, shoe sizes, and they all look kind of similar. But the way that the CIA and those intelligence agencies work, they do body doubles and plastic surgery and stuff like that all the time. So that's my conspiracy theory about Hubbard, is that he was, his group, it's factually known that the group was infiltrated by at least 2 intelligence services. And that's why the trademark of Dianetics was switched over to Scientology, because the term Dianetics was purchased by, I want to say, the Jesuits or whatever, an order that would, a group of people that is under the auspices of the Jesuits. So it became put into the same canon as Christianity, Judaism, all the Abrahamic religions. That name was purchased by them, just like the name Scientology is owned by them today. So what you see with David Miscavige and the Church of Scientology today is equivalent to the Roman Catholic Church, or something that's very Abrahamic. And yeah, it's just like what they do. They take over paganism. They take over something that's natural, organic, that somebody downloads, and they take and they strip the essence out of that. And these people will come along and make
they
their own.
create magnetic pinpoints to draw in what they need.
Right.
Now, for instance, like we talk about nerds being horrible today, and the nerds that came along in recent decades are just poisonous, right? But you have to remember that, like, Parsons and Ed Foreman were nerds. They were 2 kids building rockets in their backyard and reading science fiction stories. They were stereotypical. Parsons, at one point, I believe, was the treasurer for the Los Angeles Science Fiction Club. They were nerds in every sense we know nerds.
They were
different. They were different. The fact that Parsons and Ed Foreman very early on started to realize that science fiction could be used to actually generate reality rather than just predict it. And this was the first essence of chaos magic was appearing here, that they could actually understand. And who comes into the world to help resolve this? A science fiction writer called L. Ron Hubbard. So these guys were a different kind of nerd. These were nerds that were almost like the druids of their days, or the satyrs of their day. And the nerd thing was, that must have scared the powers that be. You have people who are rocket engineers dabbling in the occult, who are also very highly charismatic and likable to everyone around them. This was obviously a huge problem that the American establishment had to deal with. They did not want nerds like that. They wanted nerds like Bill Gates. Because nerds like them have the potential to alter reality beyond what the reality, and they were doing it. They were actually changed. They were doing what, and this is also why Crowley was jealous of Hubbard and Parsons, because these 2 young guys in America were actually doing it. They were actually altering reality in real time, where he had worked decades to get where he got to, and there was an element of jealousy there. But you think the CIA didn't notice that you have these 2 guys who, not only are building rockets, but they're actually doing these rituals that are, inventing these things in the sky that we can't figure out what they are. That would have been terrifying to them. This is not the kind of intellectual they wanted to go to MIT or Caltech. They wanted the Bill Gates and these awkward, the nutty Jerry Lewis and the nutty professor.
One of the weirdos and the freaks.
Exactly, and the losers. They didn't want anyone who was charismatic and good at science.
There's a difference.
Creative.
Creative. Yeah.
There's a difference between a nerd and a geek, and they were geeks. I don't believe they were nerds in the Revenge of the Nerd sense. I believe they were much closer to being geeks. Jason, yeah, you hit upon something there. There is a distinction between Dianetics and Scientology, and Scientology was that kind of corporatization of Hubbard's early, really interesting stuff with Dianetics. So yeah, that's right.
Yeah, and
Dianetics always made me think of the void comp test in Blade Runner.
Yeah, Yeah.
That keeps
At the time it came out, Dianetics, I think, was the biggest selling book in the world.
Mhm.
And it was the biggest selling book in the world in a time when things like New Age didn't exist. At the height of the communist witch hunts in America. There was no, here were people reading. That must have been, the powers that be in America must have been very, the old Anglo-Saxon power structure there must have been very put off by all these Americans when they're supposed to be terrified of communists. All these ordinary Americans are all reading Dianetics.
That must have freaked them out.
So you tell me that wasn't taken over. It had to have been.
Yeah, there's an issue here about acceleration of consciousness as well, because from from Crowley's perspective, Parsons and Hubbard were like another generation, and they'd moved things on beyond his capabilities. As far as my reading of it is, you guys will know a lot more about this than me, but that's how it seems to me as an outsider just reading the situation. They just took it to another level, accelerated things, and I don't know who's operating in this area now, but this is the challenge, I think, for us, particularly at this time. And this is how I would relate the story of Hubbard and Parsons, and even Crowley's life, and all of Western occultism in the modern era, to what is happening in the world right now, is that we're being pushed and pulled in both ways to move forward, to accelerate consciousness. We're being challenged at this moment to evolve. Those of us who understand what's happening, or at least have got some kind of gleaning of what's happening. This, I think all of this you can tie together in a grand narrative.
Yeah, absolutely. And what you were just saying, Greg, the expanding consciousness, and going into what I was saying earlier about what they're trying to do with the metaverse, of stripping away or compressing down, reducing down the inner universe of people by substituting their inner universe for what's on the phone, what's in the metaverse. And that's essentially what, people like Hubbard, people like Aleister Crowley, like the Golden Dawn, all the Western Hermetic occultists were trying to find, or not trying to, they had an effective way of developing an inner world for people, taking an inner world that existed that maybe is the size, this big, and through different practices. If you just do those practices, like you were saying, Greg, in the back of the chapter, it's like your awareness and your abilities in life just get a little bit bigger if you just do the work. And it's like the difficulty with that the intelligence services and the powers that be had with all that is that the powers that be want to be the ones who have control over how big your awareness is, over how finely tuned your perceptions are. They just want people going along, like, we were talking about earlier about sheep and different animals that, like you guys were talking about, they follow the most popular sports team. They follow the most popular this, all the what did you call it, Thomas? Glory. Right. They want to make sure that's the only baits that people have. The bait, they don't want the bait to be inside someone of chasing. Oh, I've got this other game within me that I can expand my own awareness for my own self and come to my own conclusions and not be fed something by the TV or by the smartphone or by the Oculus Pro that they're going to be putting on for the metaverse. So these practices, whether it's Hubbard's work, Crowley's work, the Golden Dawn, runes, chaos magic, whatever, the establishment is horribly afraid of people actually being able to do something with that. And that's why.
And it always comes out.
Sorry, Tina, go ahead.
In a way that they can never predict.
Right. Yeah, they don't have control over it.
That's why they're afraid of it, because it comes out in people that you cannot say who it's going to be. Sorry, Thomas.
No, it's okay. Another example would be Deepak Chopra. Deepak Chopra's early stuff is excellent. Do not slag it. I know he's a clown and a joke now, but I can honestly say his early books back in the early 90s, late 80s, he was the one who taught me about etymology, the meaning of language, the meaning of sounds, about things like the power of language, the power of sounds. He was the first one to actually take things like the Bhagavad Gita and make it very acceptable to people. It was no politics. There was absolutely nothing in his early work except a healthy mind, a healthy soul, and a healthy body. And then suddenly, out of the blue, around 2000, he starts appearing on Oprah, and he's talking bollocks now for the next 20 odd years. talking about things like climate change and, you know, attacking Trump and all this stuff. Now, he's a classic example of someone who's definitely got to. I've no doubt about it, because he was too good for the New Age when he first came out. He was for, like, I would have never touched a New Age text when he came around. And I remember one time someone gave me a tape of his about his translation of the Vedas, and it was absolutely beautiful how he talked his way through the ancient Vedic texts. And then I started reading his books, and just they were wonderful. Next thing you know, Oprah, and he's talking bollocks.
Yeah, that was really sad. The Chopra Center seemed like a cool place to go to back in the day. I caught him kind of on the tail end of the late 90s, early 2000s. And he was still pretty interesting then. Yeah, then when the Oprah stuff started, because there was that other guy that was really popular on her show, Eckhart Tolle. And like when all those guys started going on the mainstream and on Oprah's show and stuff, I fell out with all of that. But before then, it was good work.
Oh, I still have all my early Deepak Chopra books, and I'll never get rid of them, ever. And I'll always, it's like U2, it's like Bono, right? When people go on about Bono and U2, I says, boy to Unforgettable Fire. That, go there and don't go anywhere else, and you'll be happy.
I think so. I was going to say, I think sometimes you have to accept this gold that people give you, you know, in their old work, and as soon as things start going downhill for them, then, you know, discard everything else that they're doing, you know, in the modern day, whether it's David Suzuki or whatever the hell, you know.
I think that's a big thing. Take the idolizing people too much. You know, you don't idolize them. That way you can depart from them when it doesn't work anymore, and not being in love with them.
Yeah, take the gold that they've given you and run with it, and then move on.
Yeah, Thomas's analogy about bands is perfect. Bands and spiritual gurus, or whatever it happens to be, anybody that's, you know, creating culture or whatever it happens to be. I mean, think of your favorite bands. Okay, let's just say, assume we're all music fans. You know, how many of them have consistently delighted you over the course of their entire careers? They all have dips, and sometimes there's a predictable arc where it's just gradually they plateau and then they tail off.
They're human.
We all do this in our own lives, you know. And I'll just say, I am a defender of Eckhart Tolle, to use the most high-profile example of this type of person of which we're speaking, because I've seen with his first two books, The Power of Now and A New Earth, the physical examples of people who have just been really, really helped to just get through something or step forward or just to have a light bulb moment because of something that he said. And he's reinterpreting age-old things. But Thomas is exactly right about these people becoming compromised. But I'll always stick up for him, because there was one particular example in my personal life where I saw someone utterly transformed for the infinite better just through reading A New Earth. You know, as simple as that. And that has benefit. You know?
Well, and I think that's where the compromise happens, is people do make these huge transformations, and that's like an energy signature, right? That it's like, you know, the boys out there doing their stuff in the desert with the working, it gets noticed. And then so something comes in and it takes it over. But you have to, like what we're all saying is you have to take it for what it's worth when it's good and when it's working, and then just leave it alone when it's become something else or not.
I agree. I agree with Timothy, Greg, and James bang on there. Just because it turned to shite doesn't mean that the gold that they did produce was less gold. And, you know, that's what I hang on to. I can't deny it. You can't, I think there's too much puritanical mentality. Like I heard someone going, like Bruce Springsteen has become a complete dry shite in recent years, right? And John Waters and I were talking one day, and John said to me, you know, the people that he sang about in his songs in New Jersey would all be Trump supporters now and would hate Bruce Springsteen. And I laugh because it's absolutely true. You know, the working class people that he grew up with and sang about. But at the same time, too, I can't deny the fact that Bruce Springsteen has written some amazing music in the early days. And I'm not, you know, I can't walk away from that. I just have to detach the art. It's almost like that's the daemon, and what came later was the wanker. And I can ignore the
Daemon and the Wanker, his new book.
And Daemon and the Wanker, that's my next book. I can ignore the wanker, but I will never abandon the daemon. And that's what that is. That's what I'm up to.
Yeah.
Remember, a lot of this stuff, whether it was U2 or Bruce Springsteen or famously Led Zeppelin with Stairway to Heaven, they were conduits for something.
Yeah.
So we shouldn't overly associate the gold, with their physical, incarnation or their personalities or their egos or whatever they are in this world, whatever they have become,
Yeah, appreciate the art or whatever it is, the writing, the music, the movies, the acting, and get the fuck over who they are as people.
Because it's the establishment and the media that want people to be obsessed with the personality and everything and keep it going as a pure stream of pure gold, where it's like only at that point do you have something where there's that obsessiveness to it, and that's when you know something is no longer organic because something has come in and taken over it, and they want it to be like a continuum of amazingness going on, like you know what I'm saying about that? Like it's the media, it's all these powers that be that want you
just to be a machine.
Yeah, to be a machine.
It's the parable of the goose with the golden eggs.
Yeah. Perfect. Thank you. I like that.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, like, if you think
the theme for tonight and everything is reject the wanker.
Yeah.
A new book right there. We'll send you the transcript for this one, Thomas.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's like those people that have given you really good songs, and then suddenly, an album they do an album, and then it's auto-tune, so or something like that. They just change right over, and it's completely different. And yeah, there's something really fundamentally different about it, and it's not because they suddenly got an extra injection of that's probably the wrong word to use tonight, isn't it? Injection of creativity. No, they just going with where the wind blows. I think it's almost like some of the time they just simply run themselves out and they've got nothing else to give almost.
That's organic.
Yeah, it's like they've been harvested to the point where they got nothing left to give, because all of their creativity gets siphoned off to become, a money-making thing. And it's great for a while. But if you've seen, some of our favorite musicians, they age horribly.
Yeah.
We'd rather have it like a singer-songwriter like Nick Drake from England, who just burns brightly and not very long and gives everything. Just that's it in one. It doesn't have to be
decades long. Yeah.
30 albums. It's like, I'd rather have one album, just pure magic from someone.
Jeff Buckley.
Jeff Buckley. Yep.
Yeah.
I suppose you've got certain artists as well. Sorry, Tom.
No, just one band, the Chameleons. They made a couple of glorious early albums in the 80s, and their manager died, and they never recovered, never made anything else. But it was just two albums of pure magic.
Script of the Bridge is the best, I think.
Well, that's to me that's the greatest debut album of all time.
Thomas, that makes me think of a question I actually had for you. What do you think of the Led Zeppelin curse?
Well, I was saying to Timothy and Jason the other day, I know fuck all about Led Zeppelin. I don't know anything. I know only the most famous songs, and I never really got into them. But the Led Zeppelin curse, I remember reading about years ago in the tabloids, and apparently there's a curse on the band because of
Kenneth Anger
doing stuff at Kenneth Anger has the curse.
Yeah, you put the Midas curse on them, he said.
Oh, really? Because he put a curse on the singer from The Move. And you all know what happened, or the band Love, one of them. And he put the curse of the Toad in the Well on. And this is an amazing story. Kenneth Anger was appearing as the kind of stage manager with the band. And he put the curse of the Toad in the Well on the singer. And the guy accidentally, well, not accidentally, really, ended up in the Manson ranch and was implicated in the Manson murders.
Beausoleil.
Yeah, and he spent the rest of his life in prison. So, Kenneth Anger, because he took $30,000 off Kenneth Anger and wouldn't give it to him. And that worked. But I thought the curse of, I didn't know about the Kenneth Anger. I thought Jimmy Page messing around with Boleskine had ended up with John, what's the singer's name? Robert Plant's son dying. That's a story I heard.
Yeah, apparently what happened was Jimmy Page, invited him to Boleskine House. He wanted to make a movie. Kenneth Anger wanted to make a movie. And Jimmy Page was supposed to write the music for it, 40 minutes. Eventually ended up doing only 20 minutes. And Kenneth Anger kept asking him, telling him, I want more of the music.
Okay, this is the music for Lucifer Rising.
Yes, that's the one.
Yeah, I'm glad he did, because the music they replaced it with, the one that's in it now, is infinitely better than anything Jimmy Page came up with. And also, Jimmy Page appears in the final version of the movie. So how, as the Magus? So I find it interesting that, you know, if Anger hated him so much, why did he put him in the film as the Magus at the end?
Well, Marjorie Cameron there again. Wait, is that? No, she's not. Never mind.
No, she's in the Pleasure Doll. It's Marianne Faithful in the place in Germany I made a film on, the Eschensteiner. I tried to follow.
From what I know about the story is that Kenneth Anger cursed the band specifically, not the individuals. So, and ironically enough, the person who was most angry with Jimmy Page ended up being the least effective. But then after the band split up, never made music worthwhile again.
John Bonham died.
Yeah, also.
Yeah, well, that's weird. He's a very vindictive man then. But the thing is, the music that ended up on Lucifer Rising, which is one of my favorite films, it's vastly superior to. I've heard the Jimmy Page stuff, and it's the Led Zeppelin stuff. It's quite mediocre. The final electronic soundtrack is vastly better. Would you agree?
Jimmy Page was very heavily into drugs at the time. He was passed out for days sometimes.
An alcoholic as well, like drinking 12 bottles of whiskey a day.
Guys, I've got another recording to do in the morning, and it's been a long day. So it's been another wonderful chat. It's really adding something to my life, I have to say, doing these things. So I'm going to check out now, however, and have a cup of tea in bed.
Yeah, I'm going to go too as well. And so thanks everybody for showing up again as usual.
Thank you guys. Happy New Year.
Yeah. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Don't forget to check out the new music video. We're very proud that we're now a music channel as well. So see you all. Bye.
Well, that's good, Thomas, because music happening.
I know. And your band were pretty good too, Neater. So you should get out there as well.
There's new music happening with other people that have gravitated into the sphere.
Okie dokie. So that goes for anybody watching. If you have a song or something that we think we'd like to make a video about, and put it on the channel, don't be afraid to ask. So if you're in a band or a singer or something, and you have a song, we might do it. Okay? Bye-bye, everyone.
Good night.
Okay.
See ya.
Sweet dreams.
See ya.